I'm here with Greg Mattacola, our very first guest on the Life by Design podcast. I'm very excited about this. Greg actually works here at Strategic. He's a senior advisor and partner. Greg is also certified financial planner and practiced law for 20 years prior to coming to Strategic.
I did. 7 years in recovery.
Yeah, so I think having Greg on first is great. We have a wonderful topic today, and Greg, I think it's great for not only your clients but for our audience here on the podcast. All that experience is going to come into play, and we're going to be able to hear about that. And I'm really excited about that.
This is fantastic. I'm really excited to be here. I'm thrilled that Strategic is rolling this out. I think it's going to be great for our clients and for the public at large. Very excited.
Yeah, me too. This is probably one of my favorite things I've done so far. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit before we get into our topic today. Kind of what guided you to the move from practicing law into becoming a financial planner?
Sure. It was a very there was no grand master plan in terms of how it happened. It was very organic. I was practicing law, and in the course of my law practice, came in contact with lots of financial planners when I was doing estate plans for my clients. And I was seeing the same cookie cutter approach over and over, and not great follow-up and not great kind of comprehensive planning. Mm. And then I began to have a few clients in common with Strategic, and I saw a very different approach. It stood out markedly from the rest, and I liked it. It was very client-focused, very proactive, very comprehensive. It was very similar to how I had always tried to model my law practice. It was the first financial firm I found that had a very common service delivery and way to treat clients. So that was the first thing I think that came, kind of popped in my mind was, wow, these guys are different. Then I got to know them, and many of the advisors here. Got to know Alan and people like Mike McGraw and Aaron Evans and Francesca, and just all great people. That stood out. And then lastly, I had been practicing for 20 years. I had done a number of things throughout that time, small firm, big firm, started my own business. I was an in-house counsel attorney to a healthcare organization, just lots of different things. And I was ready for a change. I wanted a different challenge, a new challenge. I've always liked finance. It always interested me. I always kind of was on the periphery of it, in terms of things that I was doing for my clients. So I thought, well, it's just really a similar vocation in the sense of it is service first, client centered, their well-being above all else. So very similar vocation, very similar themes, just a different subject matter. Yeah. And I was ready to take on that challenge, and it's been now over 7 years, and I haven't looked back. It's been a tremendous career shift.
Yeah, well, and I think, not to continue to talk up the company we work for here, but before we get into our topic, but I think that's one of the nice things about Strategic and kind of their thoughts on hiring is hiring the right people and getting them into Strategic so that they can take care of folks that are clients here. And that sometimes the background may be different than financial planning, but it's worth having those people in here because they have experiences and thoughts and, feelings about how people should be treated. And so we bring in the right people, which is, I think, cool. And it's cool talking to everybody here and all the different backgrounds that they have. So yeah, that was a little bit for me to hear Greg's background. I hope the audience enjoys that. But yeah, the real thing we're here to talk about, and ideally, Greg and I will be talking about this over the next several episodes, is understanding behavioral finance. And, Greg and I, before we start recording today, we were just talking about how, in terms of when we recorded this podcast, that it's very relevant. And so, I think it's a good topic for those at home, and kind of ties in a little bit to the larger scope of what strategic and our investment team really focus on here as well. And so, yeah, I guess I'm just going to open up, Greg, because I know you're
Sure.
very passionate about this. And what is behavioral finance?
Well, I think at its most basic form, right? Behavioral finance is the study of emotions and different behaviors when it comes to financial decisions. And to me, that is at the basis of virtually everything that we do. Um, it is very easy to make decisions in a vacuum, right? With
Mm,
no external um, factors or stressors or anything kind of weighing you down, right? But that's not how life works. That's not how uh, people go about their day, right? When our average client, any investor, is going to have at any point in time a number of things coming at them, right? They both related to their finance and unrelated.
mm.
So they're going to pick up a newspaper. If people still pick up newspapers anymore, they're going to
I
look
don't
at,
know.
yeah,
No, I don't think so, but maybe.
debatable. Dating myself a little bit with
Yeah.
that. I still pick up a newspaper now and again. Um, they're going to look at their phones. They're going to log on their tablets, their computers. They're going to see all kinds of information coming at them about the market, about politics, about what's going on in the world,
Mm,
about what's going on domestically, and that will play on their mind. They may have something going on, a personal struggle. That's going to weigh on their mind. All of these different things affect people's emotions,
mhm,
and those emotions play into decisions.
mhm,
So, the traditional finance theory, expected utility theory, goes off the basis that people are going to act rationally at all times. They're going to use all available information to them. They're going to sift through all that information. They're going to come to the most rational, uh, evidence based, calm, proven, optimal decision. That's kind of the classical decision, classical finance model.
yeah.
But what's been proven is that is not really the case,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
we all don't do that because for a number of reasons, and some of those are emotions, some of those are personal biases that we have and fall into, um, time constraints, uh, all those things play into how we make decisions. So, in terms of what we do for our clients and how we guide our clients, it's really important to be aware of uh, how emotions and
Mm,
external factors play into that decision making process because it'll help us a relate to our clients better, understand our clients, be able to communicate information more effectively to them, and help kind of bring them back to a more kind of level emotional ground in terms of decision making.
yeah. And have you seen? So from my side of the fence, from a marketing and content creation, living on the web for many years, I think there's been a marketable increase in clickbait, fake news, and I don't mean that in any other way except for actually fake information, whether it's AI generated or I'll be honest, I'm a huge Disney fan, so the big one that I fall for is always like this ride at Disney World is shutting down. Everyone's angry, and then I like, oh my god, which one is it? And I click on it, and it turns out nothing. It's like a garbage can they're taking out of like one of the alleys. Um, but yeah, so like, have you seen over the last 7 years that you've been doing this, maybe this increase in that sort of emotional sensitivity because of how the internet works, how social media works?
I have, for sure. Um, and maybe somebody who's been in this field for 20, 25, 30 years will say it's always been there.
Mm,
But I just feel that the onslaught of information coming at people all of the time, right? And from all different sources, all different mediums, just phrase on their, emotional stability. It leads them down paths that they don't need to go down. Um, and we see it in all forms, right? We have some clients. I saw this on TikTok. I saw this on Fox News.
Yeah.
I saw this on MSNBC. What do you think about it? We get questions from derived, that had their origin from so many different sources. And just like you say, it's impossible for people to know what's legitimate.
Yeah.
And we get that question a lot too. Like people will send screenshots and snippets. Is this true? Is this legitimate? Is this, is this credible? And I just think it's increasing tenfold every day. And really what it's designed to do in some shape or form is, either towards ad revenue, right? I mean, the clickbait, that's how they sell. That's how they make their money, or to get you to buy something. There was the saying in a documentary about social media: if the product is free, then you're the product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, so
100%.
if you're on Instagram and it's free, if you're on TikTok and it's free, I mean, you're actually what's being sold.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that leads us, into our main topic for this episode is heuristics, right?
Yep.
And how that works. So maybe for those at home, which I'm assuming most won't know exactly how this ties into behavioral finance, but can you kind of explain to us what heuristics are and what the different types are that play on our behaviors and our decision?
Sure. Right. I mean, it goes to that definition I gave before of behavioral finance or prospect theory, right? Which is in contrast to that classic finance model, expected utility theory. And what it is folks are taking shortcuts and, basing decisions not on all available information and sifting through and making the most rational and optimal choice. Instead, they're taking mental shortcuts, which is what a heuristic is, right? It's making a decision based on a limited amount of information or a perception versus, sitting there and taking that classical all available information, rational approach, right? So an example is like there's a trust heuristic. We all use that probably pretty regularly. And that is making a decision based on information you got from what you perceive to be a trusted source.
Yep.
Right. So if you, if you get something out of Forbes magazine, right, and it states that XYZ fund or XYZ stock is likely to do well this year, and there's another author, similar article out of USA Today that opines something different about that fund or stock. A trust heuristic would lead you to take the word of the author, the writer in Forbes, because it has that financial pedigree, right? The rational, old school, expected utility approach would be to investigate both, see which author, which writer knows what they're talking about more, which one is more credible. The trust heuristic, the shortcut, it's in Forbes, it must be true, right? That trusted source, right? So we all use that. It could be people that we trust. It could be news sources that we perceive to be trustworthy. Those are all those mental shortcuts that we use in making financial decisions.
Well, and I think it's a lot of decisions in our everyday life. Like I'm sure we've all, when you were talking about this, the first thing I was thinking about is like, I have this buddy that told me some line about something, and I was like, oh, and then I just took that information, stored it, and I was like, that's true now because it came from this guy that I super trust. And then you're on the internet one day, or like looking at something, you're like, oh, that wasn't true at all. Like, you're just like, what was going on? But he heard it from a trusted source as well, so then he passed it on, and like it's just this innate human thing that we have where these heuristics apply, right? And there's many different
100%.
ones, but that's a big one.
It is a big one. And that one kind of plays into or leads into herding, right? Which is just following the crowd, right? That's another shortcut. If you see hundreds and thousands of people going one way and doing one thing, well, geez, they can't all be wrong, right? So you follow that crowd, and it's that herding behavior that we've seen and throughout history and finance that has directly contributed to some of the bubbles that we've had, right? And oh geez, everybody's jumping on these .coms. I need to jump on this, or I'm going to be left out of the party. That that doesn't necessarily lead to rational, well thought out decisions. It's more, hey, they're all doing it, it must be okay. Let me follow suit.
Or sometimes, like I had heard recently about like some experiment. I don't remember the details, but the broad strokes was there was only one person in the experiment that wasn't in on it. Everyone else came in, they saw something, and they were like, oh, it's blue, when it was clearly green. And then that person comes in after hearing everyone else say it was blue and was just like, yep, it's blue, when they knew it was green.
Right.
And, that's a simplification and like probably not exact details, but that's the idea, right? Is where instead of doing it because everyone doubted it and you thought that was the right answer, it almost is like, well, I don't want to be the one that was wrong. Like, maybe I'm messed up and I like.
Well, it takes a tremendous amount of confidence, right, to be the objector.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it goes back to that old, right, the old parable or story, however you want to describe it. The emperor with no clothes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole, everybody's going along. Oh, isn't he dressed beautifully? Isn't such a splendid array? And one kid pipes up, he doesn't have any clothes on. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, think of the housing market crisis in 2008. Seemingly all of these people were in on this phenomenon, right, of these collateralized mortgage products. And going back to that trust heuristic, right, that's another one. Rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, that's another thing that people rely on. That's a trust heuristic. That's a mental shortcut. Well, they rated it AAA. It must be amazing.
Yeah, right.
Well, that was going on then, right? All of this, the whole herd was taking part in this, financial product. And it was a select few that were betting against it, right? I mean, it's embodied in that Michael Lewis movie about it all. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that rational investor.
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to. And I think that's one of the greatest values that we can provide people is kind of getting people to take a breath in the wake of, or in the face of, I should say, chaos or noise that's coming at them. Getting them to slow down, take a breath, and look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Right. And look, long term. Show them, a kind of a classic approach to kind of combating, knee-jerk short-term reactions is, hey, let's look at what the market has done over the last 50 years, 100 years. Let's show what a diversified portfolio can do over that amount of time. It's been through all sorts of noise, all sorts of events. And let's get back to kind of that evidence-based approach, really. And that's really, I think, a big part of what we do is just being that, voice of reason.
Yeah.
And, calming effect. If we're doing our jobs well, I think that's what we should be and should be providing.
Well, and I think overall, and our listeners here are gonna hear Doug talk about this a lot over the next however long for the podcast. But our evidence-based investing, and really, trying to equate it in my head, is that, like, I think about it with, this is another very topical thing with all the snow we've been getting lately. If we get a little bit of a leak in our roof, I don't burn the roof down and like change. I just
That's
fix
right.
that little leak, and then my roof is still good. It was just something happened in that little one
Right.
area, right?
That's right.
And so I'm just fixing that one shingle, or if I have a metal roof, just screwing in that one screw to make sure it's not leaking anymore. I'm not tearing the whole roof off and starting over. And so I think, it's hard because, hey, for all of us, finances are very tied to our emotions and our well-being and our family's well-being. So sometimes it's very difficult when you see a dip or you hear something or hear a news item, whether it's real or not real or whatever it is. It's very hard to disconnect from that and go, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm going to look at this over the next 10 years, right? Like, that's not a thing that I think day to day we really.
It doesn't come easy.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
not come easy to us. And, that's really what we can provide, is that see the forest kind of viewpoint.
Mm,
It's easy to get caught up in the trees, right? It's
yeah.
easy to get, focused on the smaller minutia or letting emotions kind of carry us away. Interestingly, being completely devoid of emotion isn't necessarily the answer either, right? A little emotion can be good in the decision making process,
Hmm.
but what studies have shown is it's intense emotions, intense
Right.
reactions is where you can overcorrect, overreact, and really cause damage to your investments and kind of long term goals.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think overall, if you're sitting at home and like me, it takes me a little bit more to think about the market and financial trends and all of that stuff, as I'm on the marketing team. But, I think part of it is just thinking about everyday life items and going, okay, is this spoiled or is this done now because this one small thing happened? Or am I just going to tend to that one small thing and move on? And if you look at your everyday life, whether it's raising your kids or, you know, whatever it may be, you go, okay, no, I'm in this for the long term.
That's right.
And I want them to be this like great adult if we're talking about our kids. And just because they like threw their truck today as a 2-year-old doesn't mean that, that's it, it's done. And
That's
so
right.
and I'm trying to equate that to like everyday items. I hope no one feels like I'm talking down. It's just, that's just how I see the world and try to like go, okay,
It's
this news or this market thing's happening. I need to take a step back away from this and go, based on what we're doing here, we got it handled. It's just very emotional right now. So maybe I need to step away from it and think about what that looks like for me.
Look at nutrition and fitness.
Yeah.
That's a an area of life that I always liken and compare this to, because I think there are a lot of similarities. There's there may be debate about which diet is the best and which way of eating is the best and all those things, but
Hmm.
there is very little debate about the basics, right? In the
Right.
sense of, if you want to be healthy and fit, there needs to be a certain amount of movement on a weekly and daily basis in
Yeah.
your life. You need to, for the most part, be eating clean. Maybe you're Mediterranean, maybe you're pescatarian, maybe you're more meat based, whatever the case may be, right? But it's single ingredient foods.
Yeah.
It's foods in moderation. Um, a good protein source, a good carb source, fruits, vegetables. Avoid processed, and keeping caloric intake to a moderate, reasonable level. There's really not a lot of debate about those things. And if you're on one of these plans, if you're on if you are on a fitness journey and want to be, trying to get to a goal, it is never a linear, no no backslide path, right?
Right.
There's
Right.
going to be a day where you don't eat clean. You
Yeah.
you might you might have a cheat meal, you might have a celebration, there might be something where you slip. if you grow up like me, if you grow up Italian, you eat your feelings, right? You have a
Yeah.
terrible
Oh, yeah.
day.
Oh, yeah.
You go home and you go home, and that might be the day where you eat half a loaf of bread.
We're ordering pizza tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Do you throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you had that one slip up? No. The very next day you get back to your basics, right? You say, okay, wasn't my best night. Let me get back to it. The same goes with the market, and the same goes with your approach to finances. Whether it's your budget, whether it's your investments, if there's a step back, there's going to be step backs. You've seen it recently. Not every day has been a green day, right? We've seen some volatility in the market. That's part of the normal cycle. It doesn't mean that you deviate from that rational, thought out plan, right? You don't just say, "Oh, I'm selling it all." We had four straight bad days. That's the worst thing you can do, right? So it's staying calm and kind of keeping to that long-term plan. And trying to combat your biases and kind of and fight those behavioral things that pop up that might lead you to a bad decision. And this is something that I think in all areas of life that is going to be, in all career fields, I think the difference maker going forward is that emotional intelligence aspect of the job, because AI is real and AI is going to change a lot of things. But that emotional intelligent quotient, that factor, whether, no matter what the field, and particularly in this one, providing clients that emotional stability, providing them that voice of reason, I think that is going to be a big differentiator. Already is.
Yeah, I think so. And hopefully, this helped you kind of think about that, and hopefully that gets you in the right mindset. And then for next week, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some direct kind of paths for better decision making while we're recognizing these biases. So I hope you guys liked the beginning of this conversation. Greg's coming back with me next week, and we're gonna continue the conversation. So,
awesome.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Please see the full disclosure in our show notes for more information.